All right, we're going to be reading chapter 1, The Family Left Behind. I was born in 1632 in New York, England, of a good family. My father was a successful merchant who retired to York, where he married my mother. My mother's family was named Robertson, a good family name in the country, and so I was named Robertson Crusoe. But we now call ourselves and write our name Crusoe. Or Cruz, I'm not sure. And so my companions also always called me. I had 2 older brothers. One was lieutenant colonel to an English regiment and was killed at battle near Dunkirk against the Spaniards. What became of my second brother, I never knew, any more than my father and my mother ever knew what became of me. Being the 3rd son of the family and not trained for any trade, my head began to be filled with rambling thoughts. My father, who was very old, had planned for me to study law, but I would be satisfied with nothing but going to sea. I went so strongly against the will of my father and all the begging of my mother and other friends that it was as if I was drowned to life of misery which awaited me. My father, a wise man, called me one morning into his room where he was in bed with gout. He asked me why I would leave my father's house in my native country where I'd had opportunity for earning a life of ease and pleasure. He told me it was for desperately poor men or for men of great wealth to go aboard on adventures. I was neither poor nor wealthy, which my father had found by long experience was the best state in the world, the most suited to human happiness, not exposed to the miseries and hardships of the poor of mankind, and not embarrassed with the pride, luxury, and ambition and envy of the rich of mankind. He told me that kings have frequently wished they had been placed in the middle of 2 extremes, and the wise men praise to have neither poverty nor riches. He told me I would always find that most calamities in life were shared by the rich and the poor, but that those in the middle had the fewest disasters. Either luxury and extravagance or hard labor and insufficient diets bring unhappiness, but the happy medium provided all kinds of virtues and enjoyments, peace and plenty, health and friendship. This way, people can go smoothly through the world and comfortably out of it, not sold to a life of slavery or daily bread or harassed by envy and ambition for great things. After this, he begged me with much affection not to cast myself into misery I was not born into. I had no need to seek hard work. He would find me a good occupation. He would do kind things for me if I would stay and settle at home as he directed. But he had reasoned the same way with my brother, who had run off to war anyway, where he was killed. Though he said he always would pray for me, yet if I did take the foolish step, God would not bless me. I would later have a long time to regret that I rejected his advice and no one to help me. This was truly prophetic. Though my father did not know it, I observed the tears run down his face, especially when he spoke of my brother who was killed. When he spoke of my having a long time to repent, his heart was so full he could say no more. I was moved by his talk, who wouldn't have been, and I resolved not to think of going abroad any more, but to settle at home according to my father's desires. But within a few days it all wore off, and in a few weeks I resolved to run away. One day, when I thought my mother a little more pleasant than ordinary, I told her I was determined to see the world and wanted my father to give me his permission. I was now 18 years old, and if she would ask my father to let me go on one voyage abroad, and I found I did not like it, I would go no more, and I would promise to work twice as hard to make up for lost time. This greatly upset my mother. She wondered how I could think of any such thing after the talk with my father in such kind and tender expressions as she knew my father had used with me. If I was going to ruin myself, I would be sure I would never have their permission. She would take no part in my destruction, and I would never be able to say that my mother was willing when my father was not. I learned later that she reported the conversation to my father, and he said to her with a sigh, "That boy might be happy if he would stay at home, but if he goes aboard, he will be the most miserable man that was ever born. I cannot agree to it." It was till almost a year after this that I broke loose, though in the meantime I refused to listen to all the proposals of settling down to business, and frequently complained to my father and mother more about their being so set against that they knew I wanted. But one day I was at the seaport of Hull with no intention of running away, and one of my companions invited me to go with him to London to his father's ship, with the allurement that it would cost me nothing. I agreed to go without consulting either my father or mother, or even sending them a message without asking God's blessing to my father's, without any thought of the consequences, and it was a foolish choice. God knows. End of chapter 1.